everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. I have a special guest that I have been trying to get on my show for quite some time now. And thankfully, he was able to come on today to talk about his collection. His name is Stephen, also known as Vintage Rookie Autos on Instagram. Steve, first of all, thank you so much for coming on. It's a pleasure to finally get a chance to meet you and talk to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I know we've been trying to have the conversation for a little while, so appreciate the patience.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the reason why I asked you on is because, when I started kind of getting into trying to buy vintage autographs, in particular my 1961 Fleer, but even some other things, and I started going around talking to people and starting posting on Facebook groups and whatnot, and had a lot of people that mentioned your name to me. And so, and you and I have started talking a little bit, messaging back and forth, and yeah, I would say your vintage autograph collection is pretty impressive. And so, first of all, let's start off with how you kind of got started in the hobby and how you got started collecting vintage autographs.
Yeah, first off, appreciate the kind words. I know we just found out that we've been talking on Facebook and Instagram and didn't know that each other were each other. So that's perfect, right? That's what I love about the hobby is that you can spark up conversations in different areas and a lot of great people out there. But I think like a lot of people, I have, two stories of my collecting, path. And it's when I was young, I was little, I was buying, packs at the store at my school. I was trying to get one of those Jordans from the 1991 Upper Deck baseball set, the one where he's swinging a bat. And, I don't remember how much I was paying, maybe $1 a pack or something like that, trying to land one. And, it's kind of the first pursuit I can remember. And I remember also trying to get the Magic is back or Magic's returned Upper Deck card when Magic came back from retirement after HIV. And so, as a kid, I just went and opened up some packs and always tried to hit the Jordan, get the Magic, or some of my favorite players, kind of later in the 90s, like Stephon Marbury, who I think I liked just because he had a name close to mine and obviously had a lot of skill.
Yeah, it's cool as Stephon, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Well, nowadays, Stephen Curry, right?
Right.
Like Steph's messed it up, so everybody calls me Stephen now because my name's spelled the same way. It's pretty funny. Wish I was cool as him too. But yeah, so it was just, opening packs and getting excited when you hit that player who, you've seen and getting them into the binders and looking through the binders late at night when, my parents have gone to sleep or, I didn't really sell or trade, or I didn't really even know if any of my friends collected, to be honest with you. My parents would take me to the card store and, have a couple bucks to buy a pack. And of course we weren't going to spend all the way up to $5 or $6 for a pack. That would be crazy. And so, just kind of stack that stuff away and realize later that, to be honest, wasn't a lot of value there, but it was a lot of nostalgia and excitement. And, later in the 90s, I got excited trying to find Kobe rookies. I think that was the big thing I was chasing back then. And, I think the one maybe good purchase I've made in my early collecting career was grabbing a box of Fleer metal. It ended up with, a few Kobe rookies and some Allen Iversons and some fun stuff there. But, it was really just poking around trying to find cards initially. And then, for what would that be, about 15, 20 years? Just lugged that tub of cards around that a lot of people do probably in their 20s and into 30s. And my wife was like, "What is that? And what should we do with it?" Hint, hint, garbage. But never really did much with it. And in the meantime, I was going to Sonics games and I would get basketball signed and programs and stuff like that. I would say, in hindsight, nothing super valuable or exciting, but for me, it was about the chase and about meeting the players. I found that, I don't know if I cared too much about, getting the autograph itself. But in that moment, you got to, meet the players and got to know some of the Sonics and some of the old legends that nobody would talk to. We had James Worthy, for a couple years as the color commentator for the Sonics, and you just walk up and talk to an NBA Finals MVP, right? While everybody's trying to chase, Terrell Brandon or whomever they're going after. So I don't know. That was kind of like the early career, and then a couple years before the pandemic, just decided to get back into it. And the chase I had there, and what got me into it, was the 91 Hoops Dream Team set. And I was trying to get the whole set autographed, which, sounds like a relatively simple set compared to your 61 Fleers or, the 86 Fleer, or, people who are collecting the 57 Tops autograph sets. But, it was pretty difficult, to get that Jordan or the John Stockton and so on. It's tough. And again, it was about that pursuit, just trying to complete something that seemed very difficult. And I'm still one card off from that, but I have the Jordan now. And that got me excited about that. That kind of pulled me into the idea of set collecting, and stumbled across the 86 Fleer group, started pursuing that. And in the meantime, just stumbled into, cards were going nuts. The early pandemic, obviously, but still, you could get a Russell rookie for a few $100 to $1,000. Get those Kareem rookies. You can get Magic Bird rookies, still relative to today, inexpensively. Then I found out, shoot, you can find Kareem online, get him to sign it. You can, Dr. J and Magic and Bird are accessible. And so started going in that direction. So realized it was still undervalued, and just started pursuing the things that felt still difficult, where you could find some really interesting nostalgic value.
Great. Before we continue on about your collection, I do remember, or I don't know if you remember this, but you and I have, I think, joked maybe in the past about the fact, because you are from Seattle and I am from Oklahoma City. And so there is that unusual connection between the two cities forever. And I know it's, as a true basketball fan and true basketball nerd, I definitely want to see the Seattle Supersonics back in the NBA in the future. And I think it will happen. It's a shame it's taken this long. But because, those Seattle teams from the 90s and in early 2000s, because I kind of rooted for them because they drafted one of my favorite players, which was Desmond Mason back in the day from Oklahoma State. So, it's I'm glad that you and I can still talk on friendly terms.
Exactly. I probably won't be coming to Oklahoma, but I'll invite you up here to Seattle when the Thunder play the Sonics in a few years.
Could you imagine that, by the way? The first time that would ever happen in Seattle, oh my gosh.
It would be nuts. What would really cap it off is if we land Durant towards the end of his career. Just to
piss off Oklahomans even more. No.
Exactly. We could probably go down this path for too long. I made sure to wear some Sonic stuff today.
Yeah. But back to your collection. So how would you best describe your collection that you've accumulated now over these past few years?
Yeah, I pursue things that are as rare as possible, and I would say as difficult as possible to obtain. And so it didn't start that way, I would say, just because I was feeling my way back into the hobby. And, I went to a card store and said, okay, let's see what the packs look like. And oh man, that's that's not something I'm interested in, to be honest with you. And
they got expensive, didn't they? Yeah.
They got expensive, and honestly, I'm not a gambler. I think a lot of people in the hobby are, and I'm just not. I go to Vegas for the shows and the food and to hang out with friends. I don't go to gamble, and so for me that wasn't interesting. And so getting into the 86 Fleer set, initially I just said, this is the card I know. It's the Jordan rookie, right? That's what brings a lot of basketball fans into the hobby. If you're my age, I'm 38. And so I said, how could somebody possibly get a set of 86 Fleer? This is cool. And about 3 days later, I had a set of 86 Fleer. And I said, well, that was simple,
It was relatively easy, yeah.
Yeah, I think it cost me $400 or something, right? Everything but the Jordan. And I said, okay, well, now that I'm done with that pursuit, what do I do? And I realized there was this subculture of getting autographs, and I'd always liked getting the autographs. I have a couple team signed Sonics balls that I went out and pursued and finished, when I was in high school. And it was always interesting to meet the players. I said, let me try that. And I had just gotten into sending through the mail. And so kind of fit, that pursuit as well. And so, yeah, so then I kind of inched into it that way. And I said, okay, well, 86 Fleer, about a year ago, I got to 142 of 143. I'm still missing the Jordan base, still looking for that. But now what? And started looking at what are the lowest pop rate cards I could find, and how could I go about pursuing the players and getting those autographs. And so, looking for those pop zeros, looking for those pop ones. And so I would say now that I've kind of consolidated what I'm looking for, say it in a few words, which I'm way over a few words now. I would say, it's as rare as possible as I can go in almost all vintage basketball.
For 86 Fleer, well, first of all, you said you don't have the Jordan base, but you have a sticker. Do you have all the stickers in that set?
I do, yeah.
And I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, what are some of the most difficult ones to get in the 86 Fleer set? Because I haven't collected the 86 Fleer signatures like I have some of the other older sets. So, what are some of the ones in 86 Fleer that are pretty difficult to get?
Yeah, a lot of the Johnsons. So Vinny, Steve, Frank, Johnson are difficult, and then the deceased players. So Derek Smith, Manu Bowl in some ways. Well, Derek Smith is already on there, but I have to look at the checklist again. I've kind of.
Is Wayman Tisdale difficult to find?
Say it again. I'm sorry.
Is Wayman Tisdale a difficult one to find?
Wayman Tisdale is on the more difficult side. Not up there with, let's say, Steve Johnson or Derek Smith, but pretty difficult. I think any of the deceased players who haven't gone recently, like Mark Eaton's fine. Moses Malone isn't too difficult, but can be difficult to find. The Jordan is funny because it's not all that difficult to find. You just have to pay some money to land one.
Yeah.
And so trying to find one that's in decent condition at a decent price, the run up over the past couple of years has inflated the price. I would say possibly beyond the long-term value, or at least the short-term long-term value. And so I think obviously there's going to be long-term value there, but we've seen some of the prices come down on the Jordan, but not on cards that are extremely difficult. Pat Cummings is another one that's difficult to find.
Yeah. And Vinny Johnson, that's always been a name that for some reason, he seems always to be difficult when it comes to autographs. In fact, he doesn't ever sign with Panini, right? Or am I? He
just doesn't need the money, I think. And
just doesn't care. Yeah.
Yeah. Andrew Toney is another one who, is just, he had a difficult time, I think, in his relationship with the 76ers. Hasn't had a lot of respect. I think that they're having him come back a bit, and he's kind of inching his way back in. But he's a guy who's alive, but very difficult to track down and get onto that 86 Fleer.
Okay, so outside of 86 Fleer, what are some of the other things that you have that you're most proud of, or don't mind talking about?
Yeah, I will tell you there are a few I don't talk about yet, but I love the 61 Fleer. That's a clearly iconic set. Beautiful. I like simple, elegant design. That's definitely one of them. So I have the Oscar and West and Kuzi. Those are actually some of the first autographs I got coming back into the hobby. Was the Bill Russells on the 61 Fleer. At the time, I thought it was a little too pricey on the rookie card, which was funny in hindsight that clearly it wasn't. And so ended up picking up quite a few of those, and had not a friendly relationship with him, but Bill Russell lives up the road and was able to get some of those signed. Met him a couple of times in the area, and landed a rookie card at that time, and then have traded for some since then. But love the 61s, and then I think of the 57s. It's really Kuzi and Russell that I have there, and then it's going to be more oddball stuff. So I'll show you. I've not signed or anything, but really gone after the Topps Test cards recently, which I don't think get the love in the hobby that they deserve. For the people who know, they know. And realize it's maybe only 20 sets or something, right?
I know. I'm so glad you pulled that out. I was hoping you were going to pull that out. I've done a video about the 68 Topps Test, but for those who don't know, could you explain in further detail why those cards are just why they're so important, or why they're so rare and difficult to find?
Yeah, my understanding, and I'm sure somebody might correct me if I get some of the details wrong, is that Topps before the 69 set wanted to test it out and show the NBA what it would look like, and get people get them on cards. And so this one is actually licensed as San Francisco Warriors, and has Jim King in the in the correct jersey, as opposed to some of the 69 set. They were trying to secure the license and weren't able to in 68, and in some ways clearly weren't in 69 either,
because obviously there weren't any cards between 61 and 69, and Topps hadn't done a basketball set since 57.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because the 61s obviously are Fleer. So Topps, trying to get into it, trying to get that license. Made this set. It's 22 cards. I have, I guess, 8 of them now. And I've, been pursuing these. The biggest one I have is the Oscar. So it's interesting because I want to show you all these cards. But the other thing, just so you know, and we can probably get into this conversation later, I sent a bunch off to a vault, so that I'm not holding all of these cards in my house.
Yeah, that's probably smart.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just one of those things where I want to show you all of them. But yeah, I can show you the Jim King, and obviously he's a great player for the Warriors.
No, that's fantastic, because I'm telling anyone who's watching or listening, even getting 8 of those is no small feat. I think they only produced 22 in the set in total, and they obviously didn't go on circulation because whatever happened. We don't really know the full story, I don't think, but they basically decided not to put those cards out, and they waited until the 69-70 set, obviously, but nobody even knew about those Topps Test cards because they were just tucked away in a drawer or a vault or something at Topps headquarters. It wasn't until like the 90s when some of the former Topps executives starting to, bring those cards out of wherever they were hiding, and they started showing up for the first time ever. And I don't know, I'm trying to remember the numbers. I went over these numbers in my video, but I think the total number of cards that have been actually authenticated by PSA is somewhere like, I don't know, is it like
I want to say in the mid 200s, it's somewhere.
Yeah, I was about to say maybe 200 or so.
Yeah.
And so 200 divided by 22. So there's only like maybe 10 at the most of any of those individual cards that have ever been like actually authenticated. And so I mean, there may be a few people who have a complete set out there. I think somewhere in my research, I saw that maybe there are 2 complete sets that are out there somewhere. Yeah. But yeah, just getting any of those, it costs a lot of money just to get even some of the no-name players from that set.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that one of those sets was broken up last year. I think I got a couple of them.
Okay.
And so that's kind of interesting. The pop on, just so you know, any of the pop on SGC, I actually have those and cracked them over. So that's actually not a new pop. And I would imagine that a few of them on Beckett are also probably cracked over. So I think the highest, I'd have to look it up, and I don't have it in front of me here, but I think the highest pop would be the Wilt. And, there may be like 16, 17. So, this is the type of card where there's maybe still a bunch of them raw out there, but I can't imagine there's more than 20, 24 sets, and that's probably giving it some leeway.
Yeah. I think at this point, because there was a while where quite a few started circulating, and then it just sort of died away, and you can kind of tell, who still were kind of holding on to them, and they were biding their time to release them. But I think at this point, we've seen pretty much all of them that we're going to see that were taken out of the Topps headquarters, whatever, back in the day. So yeah, I doubt that there's going to be any more than 25 or 30 per individual card of those that will probably ever exist.
Yeah, I think that's probably about right. And I don't think I'll ever land the Bill Russell, but I'd love to have one. Trying to get an Elgin. I'm actually not really pursuing the Wilt. I don't know if I'll go for the complete set here, but this is the type of thing where I tell you, there's 10, 12, 15 of these. It's something I like to pursue, and I consolidated some of my collection, to be able to do that.
Yep.
And actually, it might be interesting to kind of delve into the story of kind of how I was even able to do that. It's that when I came back and I realized that people weren't pursuing vintage, and they weren't pursuing vintage autos nearly as much as the 86 Fleer set, which exploded after the Last Dance, and then they went after the 88s after that, since 86 became, little too expensive for many of the cards. I just said, this doesn't make sense that Kareem and, all the Magic Bird and all that I mentioned earlier were so inexpensive relative to the 86 Fleers, and some of the ones that are exploding. So I actually loaded up. I got 8 Kareems and 3 of the Bird Magic, all raw. I got, I think, 4 or 5 of the Dr. J's. I got 8 of the 61 Fleer. Well, I had a bunch before that, but at that point I loaded up to a total of 8 of the 61 Fleer Bill Russells. And, basically built the base of my collection during that time. Because, as I said, nothing from when I was a kid was, had any real value to it. Got those all autographed, got those all slabbed, and figured that I was going to sit on them, kind of forever. But just kind of as time's gone by, there have been, for one reason or another, reasons to sell the Kareems. I kept the best one, sell the Dr. J's, or trade them. And so I was able to, because of the appreciation of cards and, both definitions, appreciation of vintage rookie autos, get into a position where I could consolidate to get some of these, what are more considered oddball, low pop cards into the collection.
Yeah, well, you were smart about it. Because, I thankfully, I think there has been a lot more appreciation towards the vintage basketball autos going back to the 60s and 70s, and yeah, even though people like Kareem, people like Magic and Dr. J still sign quite a bit nowadays. They're still really good about that and really good about through the mail and public signings, things like that. You still have seen a pretty consistent increase in their values over the past couple of years. And I think it speaks to I think more and more people are starting to kind of understand and appreciate the vintage autos, the things that are truly low pop, even the ones that do a good job of signing, like Oscar and Jerry West and Kareem. The numbers of their cards that are autographed, especially like the rookies that are autographed, are still low in comparison to almost anything that you can think of in modern and ultra modern products. There still may be only like 120 to 150 Oscar Robertson 61 Fleers that are signed out there, I would say. Yeah. And it's a lot when you compare it to a lot of the other older stuff that's signed from back then, but in comparison to stuff now, it's still pretty crazy low. And and I think a lot more people have gotten past the stigma of autographed cards, because that was still a holdup, I think, even not that very long ago, of people thinking, no, I think it potentially decreases the value appreciation. Yeah, getting it signed, which I don't know, like that was a mindset for many years. I'm good friends with a guy who has the biggest 1933 Gaudi baseball sign collection, and he talks about this a lot, just about how even back then, obviously, if kids went up to baseball players to get their autographs on a card, they would look at them funny and be like, "Are you sure you want me to autograph this?" Right. Even the players kind of knew back in the day that it wasn't like a common thing to do to ask for autographs on the actual baseball cards or basketball cards back then. So I'm glad we've gotten to that point where more people are appreciating it, and I think we've seen that in the values and just popularity of them.
I think what happened there is, now you have pack pulled autos. And so, there's a lot of, that was a big deal, I think, basically starting in the 90s. And then now you expect almost every pack to have, an auto in it if you're ultra modern, or at least, every box to have a couple of them. And it's so common now that, it's become normal. Now the debate is not, should there be an auto on the card? The debate is, should it be a sticker? Should it be on card? What does that look like? Then you have RPAs. And so, you're trying to pull everybody basically from LeBron forward, and you just expect there's going to be hundreds and hundreds of these RPAs out there. And so if you've collected now modern and ultra modern, and maybe you've realized that prospecting isn't what it's made out to be, and that the long-term value over time is in the top 1% of cards, and you can see that in all the indexes, you start to think, well, wait a minute, where is the value? It has to be in something rare. We know that. I don't want to just pick up something that everybody has. And so you start looking, okay, well, it's in vintage, right? And from there are no pack-pulled on-card autos. There are no RPAs. So how do you get something that's equivalent for a Bird, a Magic, a Dr. J, Oscar, West, Kuzi, whoever, George, Mike, and if you want to go back that far and possibly find one, or Wilt if you possibly have one. And then you realize that, unfortunately, with Mr. Russell passing, that he's not signed anymore, and neither is Wilt. And, a lot of these guys, Jerry West does sign a lot of them, and Oscar does, and so on. But, like you said, not nearly as many as we're finding nowadays. And so I think as the hobby continues to grow, and people get more excited, and I think a lot of these new players are bringing them in, then they start looking at the history and the big name players, and where there's a store of value and true rarity, not just, grade based rarity. That, I started to see that a little bit ahead of time, and that's where I was able to build value in the collection to be able to, bring in some of these cards that I thought that I first off never knew about when I was collecting earlier, but and now able to secure in the collection and probably aren't going anywhere for a while.
Yeah, well, it's something that I often talk about too, of like looking at some of these things that are probably maybe a pop 20 or 30 at the most because of so many different factors in terms of when the player was alive, when did signing of those particular cards become a popular thing, and things of that nature. There's a lot of different factors that make a lot of these things actually rare. Like I call it actual rarity as opposed to manufactured rarity.
Right.
And it just makes it a lot more interesting to me, and it really makes you go down a bunch of like in-depth research, all kinds of things that just sort of gets your or at least for me, my sort of nerd brain going, and just loving learning about why these things are rare, why certain players didn't sign, even if they lived until the 2000s, a lot of them still just kind of like, I don't really care about signing, and so you have a lot of good players or key cards from certain sets that are just extremely difficult to find, and I don't know, it just makes it much more interesting to me to collect those type of things, and also more interesting to kind of figure out the marketing nuances of those cards and autographs, and just sort of I don't know, like it's almost like a different category on its own from everything else that's out there, because everything else that's out there, unless it's like I don't know, like a really rare one of one or logo man or things like that most everything that's out there is still easy to figure out. The market value is still easy to figure out, the actual pop numbers and things of that nature of those cards. But for those cards that we've been talking,
it's more commoditized. There's a liquid market for a lot of those types of cards, whereas in the 61 Fleer, like how do you possibly value a pop 3 card from a guy that, let's be honest, 99.9% of basketball fans haven't heard of, but because you and I are collecting these sets, we get to learn about these players and learn about their interesting stories and, pursue it and find out, well, why are there only 3? Is it because of the fans not asking to get that person's autograph? Possibly. Is it because, like you said, some of them passed away early and, it's difficult, or they disappeared into obscurity? The stories behind it become really interesting.
Yep. Yeah, I've learned a lot about guys like Carl Braun and Walter Dukes and Phil Jordan, all these guys that most people still probably have never heard of them. And I find it really enjoyable to do deep dives and research into those players, because everyone, I think a part of it too is just my love for basketball history. And as great as it is to talk about and do research on the big names, obviously, of that time period, like Russell and Wilt and all those guys, but it's also incredible to kind of do deep dives on guys like Jack Twyman. Even though Jack Twyman is a Hall of Famer, I still think not enough people kind of know much about Jack Twyman. But when you're into something like a 61 Fleer set or 57 or whatever, you kind of go into it and you realize, man, there's an amazing history there with him and just with a lot of those people who played back in that era,
Right. Well, I mean, I think you mentioned Tisdale. Now I'm on camera and I'm feeling like I'm going to get this wrong, but I believe he was the youngest player in the 86 Fleer set, and he passed away first.
Yeah, that might be true. I'm trying to remember, because obviously Tisdale was an OU guy, and he took OU to the Final Four, I want to say, in 84, 85, and maybe he went into the draft right after that. And maybe he might have been the youngest guy, because I think, he might have been actually drafted in 85 or 86. And so, that's probably true.
At one point I sorted the list by age just to see what was going on. And I realized, it's kind of a crazy stat, but the history behind it is really interesting, and set building, and then you have the community, right? And I think that what I really like is, meeting guys like you. I can name a bunch of people, but I think you had Brian from Historic Hoopla on, and he and I message daily about stuff and help each other out. And there's a huge community. Well, not huge, but within these small tiny niches, you find that community of people who are always on the lookout for what you need, and you're always on the lookout for what they need. And obviously everybody's trying to get a good deal and so on. But I think that especially nowadays when it feels like everything is so divided, it's really nice to have communities of people from different backgrounds and different states and different countries at times, working together to help each other out on these funny pictures on cardboard.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been great getting to know different people interested, not just in the things I'm interested in collecting, but finding people that are interested and trying to build some really unique sets, like a 57 tops, or even something like 71 or 72 tops, which is not an easy thing to complete for a lot of reasons. But yeah, it's been great getting to know a lot of those people and to kind of see their progress and to talk to them, just learning so much about the things that they are trying to complete and things that they've been, collecting for many, many years, many of them, Yeah,
totally. Where are you at with your 61 Fleer set?
So I just got my 22nd one in the mail a couple of days ago. So now officially a third of the way through. And then this is something that I started, I think around 6 months ago. So to get 22 of them in the 6 month time period, I felt like was quite the achievement, and it certainly took a lot of trading and a lot of selling to get there. But I'm glad I accumulated as many as I did in that short time frame.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on the excitement of landing the cards, and especially the hard ones and those ones that obscure, and you talk to somebody, you met the person, after a game in the parking lot, whatever, it's like interesting and fun, and then just the frustration of these dry times when you go weeks without finding anything at all. And I'll be honest, after the 86 Fleer set, I thought maybe I'll do another one, right? It's pretty exciting and ready to go, and I already had a ton of extras. I've helped maybe 6 or 8 people get up and over 100 of 86 Fleer, kind of past that threshold, and started doing it. And I think I got to about 100, really quickly because I had all these extras, and then just said, I don't know if I can do this one again, this one specifically. And I started looking for something that was, for me at least, a new pursuit. And actually, I went after. Let me see here if I can find it. Wherever I put them, started going after the Court Kings 5x7s.
Nice.
Signed, which is a 50 card set with 24 Hall of Famers, but not a lot of people I think like the 5x7s versus the regular standard cards, and so slowly pursuing that over time. Kind of, I realized that last week I was at 22, I think, of the cards, in the 50, and then just kind of hit the gas really quickly, and I think I have 11 left now. So it was pretty exciting, but I think some of those sets are going to be a lot easier than 61 Fleer. A third of the way is a big.
Well, I'm a big fan of the star cards as well. I have just a couple of them autographed, and I had a bunch of them that were graded that I finally traded away or sold away to start accumulating my 61 Fleers. But I've always been a big fan of those, and I really want to try and get some more of those autographed sometime down the road for sure. But for some of them, once again, I think you have sort of this thing of like actual rarity of this combination of, obviously they were a small company that didn't manufacture a ton of sets, and people didn't think about, I think, getting them signed for a long time. And then people are also just kind of like still kind of iffy about the authenticity of the cards themselves. And so I think you're not going to probably find very many of those, even from players that are still living nowadays. I don't think you're going to find them that are going to be fully authenticated.
Yeah, I just picked up a couple this week from some deceased players, like Moses Malone was one, and then oh goodness, I'm gonna mix it. I think Tisdale's in that set too. I'd have to look what I picked up, but that was tougher ones to find, but again, not close to the 61 or 86. Those are interesting. You mentioned the sticker. All right, I'm gonna start showing off a couple of these.
Oh yeah.
So that's why I was opening my box here, but this is the my Jordan sticker there, which it's interesting. The other interesting thing that you've probably run across with these vintage autos is I don't know if it's a debate, but just I think preference between the period, authentic autos. So like it appears to be signed closer to 61 or 86 or 57 versus some of the ones that were signed later. And you even run into that with Jordan, at his age, where you have the auto that was, developed, I think, by Upper Deck really, in the mid 90s, versus his early autos from, the late 80s. I don't know what you think about that, or if you pursue one over the other. I don't know if you have a choice along ones.
I always levitate towards the period autos. And I always have a real interest with modern players or players from the 80s and 90s of obtaining their early autos, because as you and I both know, many of these players nowadays that start signing tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of these cards, their autographs start changing over time. They get a lot more shorthanded. They don't look near as good as what they were in their early careers usually. So their original autos usually are just the best looking and just kind of unique, Like I even think about one of the few modern things I'm looking at getting would be like the Giannis Antetokounmpo Panini Gold Standard RPA auto, because it's one of the few on-card autos that he signed with his very original Greek alphabet signature, that he stopped doing very quickly, because he's like, I'm not signing 10,000 of these cards with like this. So that's always a preference for me, is the early autos, and then the period stuff, especially going back to like the 60s, and you can tell it's like a ballpoint pen period signature. I'm always a little more interested in those for sure.
Yeah, and to your point, what I just showed you was one of the cards that came in, this week. This Hakeem signature stuff. I think I'm giving you a lot of glare here. Maybe I'll pull it out of the huge top loader here. But this is signed Hakeem, with the A instead of
the A. Yeah.
The H, and nowadays you fast forward to 2023 here. I was going to say 2022, and I think his signature is basically H line, right?
Yeah.
And I sent a few cards to a signing, through Fitterman, and he's, exclusive through Fitterman, and had him sign some stuff, and it came back, beautifully signed with his new auto, and Beckett wouldn't authenticate it. He just said, "What is this?" Right? So I actually had to get Ryan Fitterman on an email with Beckett to show, to talk with them and show them, no, this is clearly his auto. He's signed now thousands of these per signing, and what that looks like. But I've actually, in a weird way, I've been blessed enough to be able to have both, not the Jordan sticker, but on some of the other ones, I have Hakeem sticker with both. I have the Hakeem base with both. And many of the others like Charles Barkley and Conor Malone and some others. And I honestly haven't decided yet. I think at some point I'll go one direction or the other with some of them. But some of I think it kind of depends on the auto, whether it was rushed or whether it was they sat down and actually took some time to do it. But yeah, the other thing I've done now that I've, completed some of these sets and, I ended up displaying them was I started going after some non-card stuff. And so, I was able to meet Kemp and Peyton a couple times and at that picture sign behind me, which is, my favorite finals from the Sonics, other than obviously the championship. And, went after some other stuff. So I was going to show you this too. This is obscure for you if you're ready for this. So Elgin Baylor went to Seattle University and ended up going to the finals with them, and had a great career clearly as a college player, and went on to do what he did.
Yeah, he was okay.
He was all right. Yeah, he was pretty good at basketball. And my grandparents met at Seattle University during the years that Elgin went to school there. And so my grandma, when she was clearing out her house, gave me a couple of her yearbooks.
Oh.
And just before Elgin passed, I had him sign her yearbook.
Wow.
Which was great. So I put, he signed it, Elgin Baylor. Realized it actually didn't say Seattle U.
That's an interesting looking cover too for that yearbook. That's almost like a Hitchcockian type of movie poster. That's
totally really interesting, right?
Yeah.
It was actually pretty difficult to figure out how did I want him to sign it. So, he got the good autograph on there, which was great. This was the year they went to the finals.
Nice.
And then because it actually only said Seattle University on the spine, I had him put Seattle University is on there as well.
And is this picture inside of there somewhere? Have you found it?
It is, yeah. I probably should have.
That's okay.
Yeah, but he's in here, and actually, I think I had some pictures that whoever did the signing sent me of him looking through, and so you have pictures of him. There's like a whole section.
Oh wow!
Set aside for Elgin.
Nice.
They also have the stats in here, which is funny because at a certain point, I believe they lost all of their tracking of the stats for Seattle U. So they had to actually go to these yearbooks to retain the stats and had to track them down. And so they have the totals. He had, let me see here, 32.51 points per game and 23.4 rebounds a game.
Oh, yeah.
And this is the team he was playing with. They look like NASA.
I was about to say, I can't imagine there are too many players playing against Seattle University in the 50s that were anywhere near the size of Elgin Baylor. So yeah, you have to kind of feel sorry for them in a way.
Yeah, well, he got to go to the finals with him. So that guy was amazing. And then I think in here, let me see if I have this right, but there's I believe he was homecoming king as well, but that may have been a different year. So I can find that at some point and send you the picture, but it's pretty funny. There's a big picture, and I think it says King of Hearts or something like that.
Oh my goodness. Well, that is awesome. That's an unbelievable find that your grandparents made. So man, yeah, that is a great thing to have for sure. And that was great that he got to look at it and sign it for you. That's incredible. That's an incredible story.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Wonder, I have a couple of other ones. We were talking about rare. So I've mentioned the 81 Fleer. Excuse me, goodness, 61 Fleer.
Yeah,
Russell's a couple times, which that's a big one there, obviously, and got him to put some inscriptions, which is I didn't think it was that big of a deal at the time, but then looking back, realized that it's kind of amazing that he agreed to do that for me at all.
Yeah, that's another thing too that you kind of have to kind of get into, realizing even the ones that do like to sign, they don't often like to do inscriptions, and so there are some inscriptions out there that are worth a lot more than others because a guy like Bill Russell, he signed, but he didn't really like doing inscriptions a lot. He usually had to kind of do a real nice personal ask for him to do it for you or whatever. So yeah, I mean, the amount of Bill Russell inscriptions are actually pretty small. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty low, and I realized that later on. I just asked and he didn't. It didn't seem like that big of a deal to me. Just thought it was pretty cool, but in hindsight, it's pretty fun to look back and see. I got him to put 5-time MVP and 11 rings and some interesting stuff on there. But a guy like Larry Bird, you can't get an inscription out of him to save your life.
Yeah. Yeah, he's real funny. He won't even do inscriptions on the Panini sets that say inscription set or whatever. Like, it's like, nope, you're not going to get inscription. I'm still doing Larry Bird. Yeah.
I almost expect him just to put no underneath. Right?
Or just draw a middle finger or something. Yeah, that would.
Yeah, exactly. That would go for huge money.
Oh gosh.
So it's come out though that he, I think, is signing inscriptions now exclusively for Fanatics.
Oh really?
This just came out recently because somebody had a jersey that was brand new and it's signed with inscriptions, and everybody went, "This looks like a brand new signed jersey. Where'd this come from?" It's like, oh, he's exclusive to Fanatics for inscriptions.
I can imagine how much money Fanatics probably ponied up for it, so.
Right, exactly. And, a guy like Bill Russell, who, didn't always want to sign, and, clearly inscriptions were, not top of his list either. For me, going back and thinking about historically, what these players have done and what they've been through, it becomes a lot more understandable to say, Bill Russell in the 50s in Boston, that was a tough place to live. And, it was tough being a black man there. And even while playing basketball, which was obviously, he was beloved for that. I'm surprised he signs anything at all ever for anybody, to be honest.
Yeah. And I think I can't remember where I heard this, but I remember hearing at one point, it took him a long time to get to that point where he started to be okay with doing things like public signings and things, and through the mail, even things of that nature. He didn't do it for a long time. And I think that is a part of it, and probably part of it for a lot of players from that era of like, why would I want to sign something for people who, just may have said some things or done some things, while they were playing during that time period. It's like, why would I be nice to these people and do that for them?
Yeah, absolutely. And, we talk about the sets. Another thing that I've started to do is try to get master sets of these players signed. So again, try to find something that's difficult to do and then go one more level above that. And so, I've completed it for Bob Cousy. I was short on Bill Russell just because Topps test and the 55 All-Star, All-American Club.
All-American, yeah. That's yeah. Good luck finding those signed. Yeah, no.
Exactly. It's just not really a thing. I do have the All-American Club, just not signed, and I don't have the raw, the unsigned Topps test for him. Pursuing Oscar right now, but the one I've been most excited about, I would say, is I'm one away from completing Lenny Wilkens.
Oh,
and he's this super humble but confident guy who's been through everything in the NBA, right? Yep. I mean, the guy, it was almost like he like stumbled into basketball, I guess, and absolutely destroyed it. Did so well and played. Obviously, got into coaching from there. He has ties to a lot of things I love, which is vintage, old school basketball. Clearly, the Sonics. He was the coach when we won that.
Especially kind of important person in Seattle. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right. And he lived not too far from Bill Russell, over here on Mercer Island in Seattle. And so I just, I had a bunch of his cards and realized I was getting close to his entire playing set, and actually got a hold of him and took him to breakfast, took him to lunch, and gave him some money for his time as well. And not just had the card signed, that was cool, but went through and heard his stories,
Yeah.
And, I asked him about, if you ever talked to Bill about, Mr. Russell, about his time in Boston, what that looked like. And he said, oh yeah, talked all the time. And he said, it wasn't as bad as St. Louis. I said,
yeah.
Is that right? He said, yeah, it was bad, clearly. He said,
I can imagine.
It's amazing, right? We don't have to deal with this, right? But anyways, it was, I think that the stories behind, the players and their experiences, he was walking me through holding these cards, and he goes, oh, I remember this one. Think about 61, you think about 69. He said, oh, we had a dispute, and licensing wasn't there, and so we wore our jerseys backward for 72, and couldn't get the licensing for 69. He was involved in that, and going through step by step, and talking about each card, and I remember this photo shoot and how that was different. That was pretty cool.
That sounds really cool. I think we need to wind down a little bit. Was there anything else you wanted to make sure to show or mention? I'll
show you a couple more, and that's it. We can go through. And this is one I wanted to get out there. This is a funny rare one. That's the Stockton. Stumbled across this from a collector. At one point, I was going after the top 50 set, and 35 in or something like that, and realized that Mike and Wilt, Pistol Pete. Trying to think if there's anybody else, off the top of my head.
I mean, even some guys like Paul Arizin are
right.
His 57 tops, man, it's hard and expensive to get.
Yeah, exactly. Assuming you can find one, even, right? Which again, that pursuit's exciting. But this is one that I got, and the funny part was once I landed this, I realized that I was one card shy of all the rookie cards from the Dream Team, 92 Dream Team, signed, if I count the sticker for Jordan.
Right.
And that one card was Christian Laettner.
the rut of the Dream Team. No, I'm just kidding. No.
No, he's great, but I was able to, even though it was Christian, I was able to complete the set, so I ended up.
So you got all the rookie card. One example of a rookie card sign from everyone that was in that Dream Team. And when you think about it, I mean, a guy like Stockton is hard to get. He doesn't do a ton of signings. I'm glad you pulled that one out, because that was definitely one I mentioned. I noticed as well. Because finding his 88 Fleer or a star card sign is rather difficult. Yeah,
and that's actually the card I'm missing from the 91 Hoops, which is funny. I got Jordan before Stockton, and so kind of interesting. But no, it's fun. I appreciate you reaching out, and I'll be posting more cards, and always love to meet people who are pursuing really interesting collections, and I'm always out there talking to people and trying to make connections for people. So obviously anything you're looking for, let me know, and appreciate it today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I always enjoy just talking to people just about their love for the hobby. This is what I just love doing as a passion project and everything. It's a lot of fun for me. And so, are you basically, just on Instagram and Facebook? Is that essentially where most people can find you?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, I have Twitter and some other stuff, but mostly Instagram is where I'm finding people and messaging people. And Facebook, I'm in a lot of the groups, so 86 Fleer and vintage stuff. But not too hard to find. I answer, most of my messages, or all my messages, on Instagram there, and always like seeing other people's collections, and always like supporting people.
Yep. Well, once again, Stephen at Vintage Rookie Autos. If you have anything that's a low pop, vintage, autograph, anything like that, I think Stephen will definitely be interested. So reach out to him, let him know. Thank you once again for coming on and doing this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Go Sonics.